Coming up on today's Locked On Bucks, we quickly run through what happened last night in Oklahoma City. Not too much to take from that game, but what do we take from the rest of the results last night, and what is the Bucks' most likely seeding and playoff path? We'll share our thoughts and run through all of the scenarios coming up after this on Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia here with you, joined by Camille Davis. We thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen each and every day, free and available wherever you get your podcasts, viewable on YouTube as well, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And all the everydayers starting to jump in to the live stream here and fill up the chats with their thoughts on what to expect from the Bucks. We do appreciate that. As always, Camille, I mentioned we'll run through what happened very quickly. Very interesting game. And actually, I was most surprised by when we saw the initial injury report yesterday. It was basically everyone you can imagine. As we moved closer to the game, it was essentially just Giannis and AJ Green we knew would be out, as the Bucks already announced both of those two players out for the rest of the regular season. And Dame Lillard, Chris Middleton played, Bobby Portis played, Brooke Lopez played, but as Doc Rivers said, we are going to monitor their minutes. I'm not quite sure, and we'll get into this in much more detail as we get into the seedings and scenarios, but I just don't know what their approach is going to be, because we've heard Doc Rivers say for a while now that it's important to be playing good going into the playoffs. And he has specifically mentioned the 2 seed. He did it again last night after the game that, we want the 2 seed. We would like to get the 2 seed, and mentioned the health and everything else. I think, and again, this is just speculation, I think the Bucks kind of view it and say, yeah, we'd like to have the 2 seed, but we also see scenarios where it may be better to not have the 2 seed. And I think that's part of what you saw last night.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. It's one of those things where it's like, above anything else, we want to be healthy. Like, in the way that the standings are right now, like, it's coming down to the last day of the season, like we thought that it might. And with it coming down to the last game of the season, it's not as if you can try to manipulate the standings by saying, okay, if we lose here, we'll play this team. Or if we win, we know we'll play this team. Like, there's no standings manipulation at this point. So it's really best to just worry about yourself and what's best for your team. And based on what we've heard, I mean, the Bucks aren't going into these games trying to lose. Like Chris Middleton said it last night, like, even though we were shorthanded, we were going into this game to try and win it. Like, we know if we get a win, we get the 2 seed. We do want the 2 seed. We want to be playing at home, but at the very least, we know that no matter how this shakes out, our first round series will be played at home with home court advantage. So for the Bucks, like, I think it's really a focus on health. Like he mentioned, like, if Dame comes to find out, like, come Sunday, that, like, I'm still not feeling right, then we're not going to play Dame, even though we know that this is a game. If we win it, we get the 2 seed, clear and outright. There's no other scenarios with that. Like, if we control our own destiny for that 2 seed. If we win, we get it. If we lose, then things depend on what the Cavaliers and the Knicks have going on. But health seems to be of the utmost importance. And honestly, I can't really fault them for feeling that way.
Yeah, and I suppose we should mention this too, that I said no Damian Lillard. Doc Rivers again essentially said, it was kind of just health. And I forget what his exact comment was, but he mentioned this was more precautionary and something along the lines of, we want to be playing well, but we need to be healthy going into the playoffs. And, we've already seen Giannis go down. We already went through a 16-game stretch without Chris Middleton. So we are not leaving anything to chance here against the Thunder. It's a game where I know we initially approached this saying, hey, we'll do a recap of the game. I don't know what to recap from that game when you look at who was on the floor. The fact that the Thunder, too, we should point this out. I don't know if I'd say had more motivation in that game, because the Bucks knew if they win, they're the 2 seed. But the Thunder are still alive to potentially be the 1 seed. And as of this morning, they are the 1 seed because of an improbable loss by the Denver Nuggets last night. to the San Antonio Spurs. So this, to me, more than any other year in recent memory, this final day of the regular season, this is everything Adam Silver envisioned. I saw the tweet that went out from PR2 that I think this is the first time, I forget what the exact details were, but the first time we have a three-way tie for the 1 seed going into the final day of the regular season. We know groupings, but we still don't know the order. I think last I checked, the only things that we know in the East, the only seeds that are determined are the Celtics as the 1 seed, the Bulls as the 9 seed, the Hawks as the 10 seed. We know the Bucks, Knicks, and Cavs are going to make up 2 through 4. We know those other teams are going to make up the rest, but that's all TBD on the final day of the regular season. And then in the West, pretty similar. We know the Thunder, Wolves, and Nuggets are going to make up 1, 2, and 3. We know the Clippers are the 4, and the Mavericks are the 5, and they will play each other once again. And with the results last night, I believe the Pelicans control their own destiny. So we know the chances are very high. The Phoenix Suns are going to be in the play-in tournament, but the 6 through 10 is going to be Pelicans, Suns, Lakers, Kings, and Warriors. So that last day is going to be absolutely insane. And you just have 2 time windows where all of the Eastern Conference host cities play at noon. All of the Western Conference play at 2:30. So Doc was asked about it before the game yesterday too, about how much scoreboard watching do you do? And as you would expect, any coach kind of downplayed it. But also it's going to be impossible. You know, you can't be scrolling on your phone on the sidelines. I'm sure you have staff that's in the locker room that can fill you in, but it's not that easy. So it is going to be insane. And as I mentioned, we'll get into all of these scenarios in our next segment here, and everything we know as of this moment where the Bucks could finish, what that means, and who they would potentially face as well. I suppose the only thing to touch on from this game, well, 2 things. Just the Damian Lillard component, I would assume there's no concern from you there, given what Doc said, and given that it, you know, I know that the adductor issue has been on the injury report for Dame lately, but when you're this close to the playoffs, and Doc saying too, we're just being precautious, or we're being cautious here. No real, famous last words, but no real reason for concern there from you.
No real concerns about Dame's health at this point. The only thing I will say about this game that was like, oh, okay, this is a positive to take away from a game in which, you know, the Bucks were shorthanded, and by the end of the 3rd quarter, the bench was already in the game. And it was seeing Malik Beasley have a pretty good game last night. The fact that he was 7 of 10 from the field, 3 of 5 from 3. He's been on a shooting slump. He's made the transition to the bench as well. So just to see him see some of those buckets fall, I think that can be good for him as well as we head into this last game against Orlando, which he's going to have to play a role in trying to get that victory and helping the Bucks try to get that 2nd seed in the East. So I was really, really happy to see Malik Beasley have a good game. Was happy to see Chris in good rhythm as well, since he's been in and out with the various injuries down the stretch here as well. So just 2 quick things I saw, like, hey, something positive to take away from this game, in a game in which I was like, okay, it does not seem like this is one that the Bucks are seeming like, okay, all out 2 seed. It was health above everything else. So happy to see that Bees and Chris had a pretty good game. And Chris had that crazy 3 that fell where like he was foul hunting, but it was just a bucket. So you enjoy seeing things like that go for you.
Yeah, and that was, I said 2 things to touch on. That was my second thing, was just, you know, Chris Middleton. Don't believe what you hear from some circles. He has been very, very good since his return, and they're going to need it for reasons that we'll get into as we start to navigate these scenarios that are in play for the Bucks. So we promised it. We will get to that. Everything we know as of this morning. It's why we held off on the show yesterday, so we could see, okay, nobody plays on Saturday, so we'll know every scenario that exists for Sunday. We can start to go through those. Also address some of the comments as some of you are leaving your thoughts on what the Bucks should do, who you'd like to see in the playoffs in the first round. So continue to leave those comments, and we will get to those coming back after the break on Locked On Bucks. Well, you know that instant confidence boost that you get from an outfit that makes you look really good. That's what I get with Stitch Fix. With Stitch Fix, you get a stylist who understands your size, style, budget. They do all of the shopping for you. It is the easiest way to update your wardrobe this season. Easily upgrade that wardrobe this year with a professional stylist that helps you find new on-trend favorites that will work for you. Stitch Fix makes it all so easy. I don't like to shop, and they save me the time and the effort. Plus, I get outfits that make me look and feel really good. If you don't love something, all you have to do is send it back. Shipping, returns, and exchanges, they are all always free. Style that makes you feel as good as you look. Get started today at stitchfix.com/lockedon. That is stitchfix.com/lockedon. Once again, stitchfix.com/lockedon. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, Camille, we mentioned a lot of scenarios that are in play here for the Bucks. So let's just go with what we know and what happened yesterday. So again, all 30 teams played yesterday. No teams play today. All 30 teams play again tomorrow. The biggest games as it concerned the Bucks were, to a lesser extent, the Philadelphia 76ers hosting the Orlando Magic, the Cavaliers hosting the Indiana Pacers, and the New York Knicks hosting the Brooklyn Nets. It looked as though the Bucks were going to get some help as we saw the Brooklyn Nets. Granted, it was night two of a back-to-back, but Brooklyn raced out to a 17-point first-half lead against the Knicks. The Knicks ultimately came back in a close game and won it. So the Knicks kept that pressure on the Bucks. A Knicks loss would have secured the Bucks finishing no lower than third in the Eastern Conference. Similar story in Cleveland, where it was a tight game going back and forth. The Pacers started to mount a comeback, got it down to a single possession, and then Max Strus was followed on a three with about 30 seconds left, and the Cavs already up 3. They would go on to win by 9. So again, had Cleveland lost that game, the Bucks would have clinched the Central Division, and again, been guaranteed to finish no lower than third. So you did not get help there. And oh, by the way, the 76ers won, which I think is actually a good thing for reasons we'll get to in just a second here. But looking at all the results last night, you didn't get any help in terms of being able to take it easy and lock in. Okay, we know we can cross off one more of those seeds. I have mentioned from the start, I don't think it's as important where you finish when we're talking about second or third. I think what's important is don't finish fourth. That to me changed last week when you saw the issue with Giannis, because the big thing was I didn't want the 4 seed because that would mean in all likelihood facing the Boston Celtics in the second round. At this point, if the 4 presents you with a better matchup, if that means you get Orlando or even Indiana, I would not be opposed to it, knowing you're going to have to go through the Celtics in the second round if that means Giannis is healthy. Because here's the big elephant in the room, Camille, is what makes all of this difficult and saying what the Bucks should do, who you want to face, is we don't know if Giannis is going to be available for the start of the series, at the midpoint of the series, at all in the series, at all in the second round if you win. So that's what makes this all the more complicated. And to me, I think that's what shifted things from we don't care who we play to if we can get one of these teams, we would be fine with that, knowing that we got our work cut out for us in the second round.
I mean, it's like you mentioned earlier, though, with the way that the NBA schedule is set up, like going into the last day of games tomorrow, There are 16 different scenarios, I believe, of how the standings can finish. So I see people in the comments as well saying like, "Hey, we should try to play, Orlando, or we should try to." And it's like it's really hard to try to guess where teams are going to be falling, or like, "Oh, we should let them win," because then it's too convoluted right now to be like, we're going to bank on this, especially given the fact that all of these games are tipping off at the same time. All the games that have an impact on where the Bucks finish in the seedings, they're all happening at the exact same time. And with that, like for me, the reason I wanted the Bucks to finish as high as they could was just so that they could have home court advantage as long as they possibly can. We've talked about the Bucks on the road and how that's been an adventure, to say nonetheless, so far this season, how much better they are at home. So wanting that as long as they possibly can have it was my main motivation. Like, hey, that 2 seed will be really nice. You get into that 4 seed out situation, and most likely your second round matchup is going to be against Boston, meaning you're on the road to start off that series, which is what I've wanted to avoid. So I get the health point for sure. But if the Bucks can figure out a way to finish no lower than third, meaning that if they do lose today, they would need, I believe, at least one of the Knicks or the Cavs to win or to lose as well. So you can't have both teams win. One of the two have to lose for the Bucks to get the 3 seed if the Bucks lose against the Magic tomorrow. So like that's ideal for me, no lower than third. But if it's fourth, then it is what it is. Like we're prioritizing health for a reason, because you believe in what your team can do when they're fully healthy on the court. So it's going to be one of those situations where it's like, if we can finish no lower than third, in my book, that's a win. But if it's fourth, then it is what it is, and you just got to deal with it and hope that your team is going to be healthy. A benefit of having the play-in in the NBA is that you get a week off pretty much before the playoffs start as well, because the first playoff games start the 20th, and then the 21st is when the other half starts. So you take care of business tomorrow, or if you rest, that's giving you more time to be ready for that first round playoff matchup.
And if you're the 2 seed, you are very likely playing Saturday. It's not official, but I believe that's how it's been set up the last few years since the play-in tournament. This version of it, at least, was coming into play because the 1 seed is playing Sunday. You're not going to make them wait until Friday to figure out who their opponent is. And then, hey, now you play tomorrow and your opponent has to play in a back-to-back. So if you get that 2 seed, the chances are very high you're playing on Saturday to open up the postseason. I'm going to throw this up there too, so we can take a look at the standings. Well, it didn't work out as planned, but so basically, here's the deal: the Bucks, as we just went through, the Bucks, the Knicks, and the Cavs are currently separated by 1 game in the East. So let's just start with this scenario. You mentioned, the Bucks. It's not as simple as just, if we lose, we get this. And here's why. If all 3 teams lose, the standings obviously stay as is. So the Bucks would be the 2 seed, the Knicks the 3 seed, and the Cavaliers would be the 4 seed. So there is a scenario where the Bucks could say, okay, let's lose because we think it's more advantageous for us to drop down to 4th. And the Knicks and Cavaliers may have that same approach of, you know what? Let's just lose and keep things where it is. And we like this draw that we're going to have, especially if you're the Knicks and you say, okay, it's going to be the Pacers or the Cavs, and say, it's the Magic. We like what we got here. Let's not risk moving up to that 2 spot and potentially getting Philly or Miami. So that's the risk that you run into there. I've seen some people point out as well how you handle this game in Orlando and what the Bucks should do. Punting the game basically and say, well, just lose the game so that you can avoid Philadelphia. Here's the thing. And here we've had a few of those comments. Let Orlando win, and we could finish 3rd through 4th. That's a pretty good opportunity for us, right? It seems like that's where the consensus is starting to fall here with most Bucks fans. But I'm going to throw this out there. If you win and beat the Magic, the chances of the 76ers moving out of the play-in tournament have just increased significantly because, look, Philly doesn't want to be in the play-in tournament. No team wants that because of the danger of we may not even make the playoffs. You're playing a playoff game before the playoffs even begin. Philadelphia hosts the Brooklyn Nets, and Brooklyn, again, has nothing to play for. They gave the Knicks some challenges last night, but it was night 2 of a back-to-back for the Knicks. And again, it's going to be a motivated Philly team that knows they still have a chance to get out of that play-in tournament. So if the Bucks win and Philadelphia wins, the 76ers would pass the Magic. So the 76ers would then be at least the 6th seed, potentially even the 5 seed. Actually, no, they can't get to 5 because the Pacers own the tiebreaker. They would need Indiana to lose, but Philly could get out of the play-in tournament if the Bucks beat the Magic. And to me, that's what complicates it even more, where you say, okay, we know Philly has to hold up their end of the bargain. So if we win, there is still a danger that what if Philadelphia loses and then you're getting Philly or Miami in the first round. But if you do win, the chances of whether it's Miami, Orlando, who knows, you would still have to wait on the play-in tournament. But that increases that it's not Philadelphia. And to me, that just may be the most tempting scenario that's out there because of what you mentioned as well with home court advantage and the fact that this is a team that went 18-20 on the road this season. And look, if you could point to, if you're the 3 seed, what if Philly's the 7 seed and they beat whoever it may be, if it's Cleveland or New York and the Bucks finish 3rd, you'd have home court advantage in that second round. Sure, but that's still a lot of scenarios that are in play, that getting the 2 seed and knowing, okay, we will have home court advantage until the Eastern Conference Finals. And as we've seen in the past, by the time you get to that, who knows what would have happened? Who knows if Philadelphia is the 8th seed and plays Boston and beats them in the first round, or at least pushes them. So to me, I get the hesitation, and I know I just said, look, I would be fine and almost much rather prefer getting the Magic or the Pacers in the first round. There's some potential scenarios where you know that, but just because of how convoluted it is with all these teams playing, how closely they're packed in there, and 1, 2, and 3 events triggering everything. To me, Camille, as I've started to talk myself into it last night and this morning, that to me is the most appealing. Is okay, beat Orlando and then just assume Philadelphia is going to win, and then you don't have to worry about Philly in that play-in game.
Yeah, I mean, things are a lot more simple if you just win. You just beat the Magic, and then you let the chips lay where they just so happen to lay. Because as you were mentioning, I just went to go look, and it's like there's scenarios where the Sixers end up the 5 seed if they win or if they lose, just depending on what else happens around them. They could end up being the 6 seed. They could be the 7 seed. They could even drop to the 8 seed if things went really nuclear for the 76ers and everything that they have going on for them today as well. And then as for the Heat, like, there is a scenario, it's not as likely, but the Heat could end up being the 5th seed if the Magic lost, if the Pacers lost, if the Sixers lose and they win. So they would need everyone else to lose and for them to win, and they could be the 5 seed at that point. So, like, it's all over. It feels like the most likely scenario when it comes to the Heat is finishing somewhere in that 7-8 seed range. But as we saw the other night with the Spurs getting their unlikely victory, things going to happen on that last day of the season. Like, yeah, there are some teams here that you're looking at, like Brooklyn, where you're like, you don't have anything to play up. Like, you don't have anything to play for. It's almost Cancun time. Like, you can be out the door. But on the same token, a lot of those teams as well are like, this is our last game that we are playing this season. Like, we are not trying to go out on an L either. So, like, there are those matchups as well where you're like, this team should win, but the underdog team is going to be coming in like, listen, at this point, like, we don't have anything else to play for. We don't have anything else. Like, this is our last game this season. We want to go out on a victory as well. We don't want to go out sorry. So that's something to account for as well. And I see a comment in here as well, just saying like, hey, intentionally losing never works out. It's bad basketball karma. And I am definitely somewhere in that realm as well. Like, don't cheat. Don't try to cheat the game. Don't try to game the standings. Play your game the way you're planning to play it. If you have guys that are not healthy to go, don't have them go. Like, we know Dame has the abductor strain, like things, soft tissue injuries in particular, don't mess with it. We were talking about that with Giannis and the hamstring before it led to I shouldn't say before it led to, but before the calf injury. Soft tissue injuries are just really, really tricky. So you're trying to get as much rest with those as possible. So take care of your business. Don't try to game the standings and let everything else fall where it's going to fall, because you could be like, hey, you know what, let's fall down to 4. And the next thing you know, it's Philly in that 5 seed. And you're like, I thought we would be avoiding Philly if we did this. And it's like, nope, surprise, everything else broke this way. And here's Philly in the five spot as well. So that's my mentality with just play who's in front of you, try to take care of business, don't try to cheat the game, and let everything else fall as it will from that point.
I'm of the mindset again, this one is, you know what, just win and take what comes your way. Other comments too about the fear of Philadelphia. I mean, I've pointed out from day one that was the team I did not want to see. And that's the other thing we should point out is Joel Embiid last night. It looked like, oh boy, here we go again, when he left in the first half with that same knee and kind of hobbled off the court. Did return though, and I think he scored 30 points in that game. And that to me is, look, that's it. It's again the uncertainty around Giannis that just changed all of this, because we've talked about it throughout the year, Camille, that I think you definitely noticed the differences between the year the Bucks won the championship and the ensuing years as well, where the approach was a little different. And it went from, we don't care who we get, we're playing to win and we want to go into the playoffs in a good space. And that's kind of what Doc Rivers has been preaching these last few weeks. I'm not going to say the Bucks were ducking or didn't want the smoke, but it was not the same approach the year after they won the championship. To some extent, not the same approach last year either. And look, whether or not you believe in that sort of thing, when you hear people mention the basketball gods and how they reward you and how they may punish you, who knows? Maybe you started to see some of that last year, but it's just the fact that you don't know if it's going to be game 1, game 3, game 5, whenever it is that Giannis returns, or God forbid, if Giannis returns in the postseason. So that's what changed things dramatically. I will say this. Again, I think as we've talked through this, my approach is win the game. Play to win the game in Orlando. You will have home court advantage in every series you're in, except for the conference finals, if that's the Celtics. And if you do that, you open the door for Philadelphia to move out of the play-in tournament and potentially face the Celtics in the second round if they can get that far, whatever it is, or you in the second round. But the hope is by the time the second round rolls around, you would have Giannis, or a much more healthy version of Giannis. And again, you may have him in the first round. We don't know. But it's just that uncertainty and that ambiguity. So you can, I don't know if you'd say kill 2 birds with 1 stone, but there's those 2 parts of it of, okay, we get the 2 seed and home court advantage. And also we did our part, Philly, you're welcome. Now you win the game and you're out of the play-in tournament and don't have to worry about that.
Right. And I did see a comment that says if the Bucks lose, the Magic are automatically the 5th seed, and not necessarily. So if the Magic win, but the Pacers lose and the Sixers win, the Sixers could pop into that 5 seed. Like, there are some weird scenarios with the other games as well that could lead to the Sixers being in that 5 seed, if this magical graph that I'm looking at is accurate. But this is, like you said, this is Adam Silver's dream. Like, this is the way you want the regular season to end, where it's like the last game means something for so many different teams that you're probably going to get full out effort in the last game of the season.
Yeah, if the Magic lose, the Pacers play the Hawks, and the Magic have the tiebreaker over the Pacers. That's basically the only team in the league the Pacers did not own the tiebreaker against. It was absolutely insane to look at all these teams that they held the tiebreaker against. Philly has the tiebreaker only against the Magic, so that's where that would come into play. Philly does not have the tiebreaker over the Miami Heat either, so there is still a very small chance Miami could host a 7-8 matchup versus Philly in that play-in tournament game. And the scenarios that I think are most important for Bucks fans is Bucks specifically. So again, why it's so many different options, second, third, or fourth, that they can finish is the Bucks, as we've gone over a number of times, hold the tiebreaker over the New York Knicks. So if the Bucks win, they're the 2 seed, regardless of what the Knicks do. If the Bucks lose and the Knicks also lose and the Cavs lose, nothing changes. If the Bucks lose and the Knicks lose and the Cavs win and we have a 3-way tie, In that scenario, I don't know if you have it in front of you, but I believe if there's a three-way tie, Cleveland is the 2 seed because they would have the divisional tiebreaker over the Bucks. Then the second tiebreaker to break is Bucks and Knicks. So the Bucks would get the 3 seed in that scenario, and the Knicks would finish 4th. So that's why you could finish anywhere, and it gets into all of the three-way ties and divisional record and who had the best record in conference. So that's why it's absolutely insane. And it's even crazier in the Western Conference with those top 3 seeds that we talked about, because I believe what we have right now, not that a lot of Bucks fans care, but the Thunder is the 1 seed, Timberwolves, and then Nuggets. That scenario, it's as it is now, but if all 3 teams won out, that is not what the order would be based on what I saw, because of, I believe, conference records, that it would then shift. And I think the Timberwolves would then be the 1 seed if all 3 teams won out. So it is absolutely insane on this final day of the regular season. It seems like most fans, at least in the chat here, it started off with, just lose, just punt the game in Orlando. And now we're seeing more and more, play to win. They should just win, and we'll see where the chips may fall. I do want to get to one other point, though. As we've said, there's a lot of uncertainty with Giannis, and we don't know when to realistically expect him to return. Doc Rivers said he's hopeful. I don't know what I would take from that. I don't know that it means he's going to be ready for game 1 of the postseason, but said, yes, we're very hopeful that we're going to have Giannis in the postseason. One other thing that gives Bucks fans a lot of hope, I think, is if you caught the latest episode of The Low Post, where Zach Lowe had Jeff Stotts on, who runs In Street Clothes, and he talked about that injury and the history of that injury. So I do want to get to some of those comments as well, coming up after the break here on Locked On Bucks. Well, time now to talk to you about our friends at FanDuel. It is playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball is in full swing as well, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed. That is $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And we should also point out, Camille, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It is now available on Fire TV as well in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7. Covering the top stories of the day with the local experts you have come to expect from Locked On, in addition to all of our national shows that get into every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Also a bit of a sensitive subject when we talk about NHL playoffs right around the corner. We did not get a clinching scenario for the Bucks, and my beloved St. Louis Blues were eliminated from the postseason last night. So it's going to be a rough spring, Camille. I've already divulged to the listeners, I do support the Chicago White Sox, and it's been pretty ugly there. The Oakland A's, another team of mine that I shared fandom with Kane on, are, who knows, moving to Sacramento or Salt Lake City or Vegas. It's going to be a rough stretch here once the Bucks season comes to an end. But I mentioned, hopefully that is not anytime soon. And there may be some more optimism given what Jeff Stotts had to say on Zach Lowe's podcast. Did you catch any of that? By the way, I know you listened to the
I did not.
Post
I heard the Tuesday episode, but I haven't listened to the more recent one.
So Jeff Stotts, who again runs In Street Clothes on Twitter and on the web as well, basically, if you're unfamiliar, tracks injuries and has a database that compiles a history of, this player had a hamstring strain. We found out it was a grade 2 or it was a grade 1. He missed X amount of games. And he can then put together, okay, in the last 5 years, this injury is typically equated to 14.7 days off and 7 days or 7 games that you would have missed. So he was asked about the Giannis situation. And again, the caveat that you add is we are not medical professionals and we are not treating Giannis either. So we don't know the severity of where this calf strain is at. But as Jeff Stotts pointed out, and a few others have as well, Luka Doncic had similar injuries. I believe he had one this year as well and missed about a week with it. He had the one in the postseason. I think that was Jalen Brunson's final year in Dallas, where Luka missed the first 3 games of that first round series with a calf strain that he suffered at the end of the regular season, came back and the Mavs advanced. But the other piece of it was, I know, and I wondered about this too. I think Bucks fans have quickly pointed to, here's my level of concern is Kevin Durant had a soleus issue. And you know where this is headed, Camille. Came back. And that was I think it was right around the same time or early in that first round that KD suffered that. Came back and played in what was that, game 5, I think, of the finals, 4 or 5, and ruptured his Achilles. So Jeff Stotts was asked by Zach Lowe whether or not that is a concern and how common is this, that maybe that leg, because the other thing to keep in mind is we've seen left leg issues on the injury report for Giannis quite a bit. The tendonitis, Achilles tendonitis, was there about a month ago. I think that's what he missed the Suns game with, the hamstring issues, and now the left calf. So he was asked, is this an issue that maybe that leg is weakened? You come back and you could rupture the Achilles. And as Jeff Stott said, look, in all my history of tracking this, no, again, the caveat of every body is different, but no, it's not a, guaranteed that your Achilles is at risk of being ruptured, especially once they do the tests and say, okay, it's sound, it's intact. So that's the reassuring part 1 from that conversation. I would encourage everybody to go back and listen to it because he can articulate it much better than me. But the other part was, again, we don't know what grade it is, but the way that Jeff Stotts made it sound was, this is very likely a 2-week injury. Maybe it's a 3-week injury. So if that is a 2-week injury, again, 1 game, 2 games, maybe 3 games, if you're taking it very, very cautiously with Giannis, it seems like that would be about the appropriate amount of time that he would miss. So if it is in fact just 2 weeks, it's not the risk of he's out for the duration of that first round series. And, the other thing I'll throw at you and add is this, Camille. As much as Bucks fans may not want to embrace it, you are a super team, right? I think we've talked about this on the show earlier this year. You're a super team. It's just the reality. When you get Giannis and Damian Lillard on the same team, you're not a super team. Right. So the reason behind super teams and why you do that is for these scenarios. You think back to what the Bucks did against the Brooklyn Nets, and granted, they lost the series, but James Harden goes down. Okay, we have Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving goes down. Okay, well, we still have Kevin Durant, and James Harden comes back. So Giannis goes down. Again, none of us are suggesting it's going to be a deep playoff run if he's done for the season. Right. But okay, this is why you went and got Damian Lillard. So if this is a 2 to 3 week injury, and if it's a matchup that you feel good with, again, famous last words, this shouldn't be an issue.
It shouldn't. And definitely going to go back myself and make sure I listen to that most recent episode of Low Post to hear that conversation around Giannis's injury. Again, not treating Giannis, just using data over the years that he has found from various other NBA players with similar injuries. And the Kevin Durant one is what pops up a lot. I even saw that in the comments post-game after Thursday's show, where it was people like, I don't want him to end up coming back too soon, tearing an Achilles. And there's a lot of different factors that go into that, from the grade of the strain initially to just the composition, everything, so on and so forth. So with Giannis, it's nice to hear that, hey, I don't think this means his leg in itself is weak, because what I normally think of with muscle injuries, and then another one happens where it's like, hey, your leg is or your body part's overcompensating because this other area is weak. And now this new area is being strained because of that. So to hear him say, like, from my opinion, looking on the outside, looking in, I would say that the leg is not weak. There is some, like you said, comfort to take from that, just as an outside looking in perspective. But with the Giannis thing, the thing for me is, like, you just have to trust that the Bucks medical team and Giannis are going to do what is best for him, as well as best for the team. And sometimes those things can be in conflict. Like we heard the game recently where Doc's like, I have eyes. I should have pulled Giannis. I can see that he's not looking right. And the medical team was like, no, he's fine. Where he's like, I can see something isn't right here. So there's going to have to be a level of honesty and transparency between all parties involved to make sure that he's okay. Because we know Giannis. Giannis came back for the finals in 2021, where it's like we thought that we didn't know what this injury was. And he mentioned himself later, like, if I would have re-injured that knee, things could have been really, really bad. But it's the NBA finals. I'm going out here. I'm trying to play. We also know Giannis is somebody who's a very hard worker. He has a very high pain tolerance. So there's all these different factors that come into it. But to your point about why you acquire Dame, that's why, like, people are going back with the hindsight, like, oh, I wouldn't have made this Dame trade. But I feel a lot better about the Bucks going into the playoffs if Giannis is to miss a game or two, with Dame being one of the guys on this team, than I would have with it being a Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton combo. And it's no disrespect to Drew or to what Chris can bring to the table, but having a pairing of Chris and Dame, I feel like that dynamic is just something that can really push you over the top while you're waiting for Giannis to come back. Because one thing that we saw with Drew in the playoffs, that offense can take a dip, because he's mentioned, like, I'm going as hard as I can on defense. And I'm not saying that Dame's going to be taking off on defense, but we know that offense is Dame's bag. Like, that is what he does. So if you can't weather a storm for a game or two without Giannis, but having Dame in place, like, then you're having the questions of like, hey, I know we saw this working out with the two of them, but I can't believe it didn't work out with just Dame here. Like, I feel okay about the Bucks in the first round. If Giannis is on his way back soon, like, I don't think there's something that we should rush, because, I mean, we saw it in the Miami Heat series last year where he came back really early from that back injury and he clearly wasn't himself. So all in all, again, health is most important. And I do feel good about the Bucks if they have to lean on Dame a little bit more while Giannis continues to heal, because we talk about positions of need, right? Having Dame out when you don't really have any other point guards outside of Pat Bev on your roster, like, that can really mess the flow up. But being able to have Bobby Portis come in, if he can play how we saw earlier this week, when he has to come and step into that starting role for Giannis, like he did against the Magic, like, you can cobble up enough points there. You're going to miss the defense. You're going to miss some of the rebounding for sure. And it's a hope that the rest of the team can come together and be whole enough to get that victory.
And we had a comment too of the Achilles. There's no damage to it. It doesn't mean that he can't tear it or rupture it. And that's 100% true. I think what we were trying to say is, okay, is there a much more elevated risk of that because of this? And I'm sure there is more risk of it, but the way that it was framed is, no, it's not as simple as, well, look at what happened to Kevin Durant, and that's what tends to happen. There's a lot of other things that come into play there. So anybody is at risk, knock on wood, of you and I are, Camille, walking down the street of rupturing the Achilles. It's more of, look, this does not jump it up to, it's a 90% chance if he comes back too early, he's going to rupture the Achilles. A couple other things. If we lose and the Pacers win, we would play the Magic in round one. That is also not entirely true because of all of the moving pieces here. The big thing, again, I'm just going to go back to this, Camille, with our main point, and that is, if you beat the Orlando Magic, there are only two scenarios out there where the Philadelphia 76ers would not finish out of the play-in tournament, and possibly even fifth they could get up to. But there are only two scenarios out there if the Bucks beat the Orlando Magic. And again, there's 8 total scenarios when you factor in all of these teams. So if this team wins and this team wins, only 2 of the 8 have the Philadelphia 76ers remaining in the play-in tournament. So that's why we said, if you win that game, you not only lock up your portion of home court advantage, but you may also say, okay, we've guaranteed we don't have Philadelphia. We've done everything we can to guarantee we don't have Philadelphia. And even if the Sixers lose, if you beat the Magic, there are still 2 or 3 scenarios where with a loss, the 76ers could still finish 6th and get out of the play-in tournament. So that's where that kind of comes into play is, okay, If you do that, I know we're all worried about Philly. We don't have to worry quite as much there. A lot to get to tomorrow, as we will know, what, 2:30 ish?
Oh, yeah.
2:30. We will know where the Bucks are, who they are playing. If you have to wait until Tuesday night to see who's going to come out of the play-in tournament as the 7th seed, or if you have a full week to prepare for the opponent that the Bucks are going to have in the first round. So all of those questions will start to be answered tomorrow when the Bucks play in Orlando. And one last thing to throw out there. I don't know if you saw the answer already, Camille, but I'll ask it of you. Do you know the last time the Bucks won the final game of the regular season?
Oh, I feel like it's been a while since the last time we won one.
It has been a while.
Is it 19? The last year we won one?
Oh, you got to go back farther than that.
Farther than 19? What year is it?
It was, what was that, 13? Now I don't even know the answer. It was whatever year they played Miami in the first round and were swept. Yeah, 2013. That was the last time the Bucks won their final regular season game.
Well, I saw that the ESPN, like their little predictor, had the Magic with like a 73% chance of winning this last game against the Bucks. So hope that doesn't come to fruition.
Well, I mean, then we can get into all the other scenarios of, okay, what if all 3 teams lose? Can Philadelphia still somehow? No, they can't. So yes, but look, if that happens, then you put your eggs in the, okay, I guess we are 4, and maybe that's Orlando, maybe that's Indiana, who knows? But fine, it's not Philadelphia. I think that's the big message from today's show. So we'll be back Monday, and when we do return Monday, we will know who the Bucks are playing in the first round of the playoffs. I don't anticipate any more clarity on Giannis. I don't think that's going to come until probably very, very late in the week. And even then, the clarity would be probably in all likelihood being ruled out on the injury report for the first game. Who knows? Maybe it's questionable. Maybe there's a chance that he plays early. But I don't expect any clarity on Giannis' status until probably well into the postseason beginning. But Monday, we return knowing all of these questions that we've just threw out there. Where will the Bucks finish? Who will they have in the first round? What is their path potentially going to look like? And then we can start to get into all of the discussions that come with that in the postseason. Also, I know it kind of took a detour. We did a smaller conversation about it in Giannis and his candidacy for MVP. We'll revisit some of that chatter on next week's show as well. Obviously preview the playoff opponent, but get into some of those individual looks as well. The growth of some of the players that we've seen throughout this season, and Bobby Portis, Camille, I think we owe it to everyone, as we heard from Bobby's teammates as well, just perplexed. How is this guy not the runaway for 6th man of the year? So we'll certainly have that discussion next week on the show as well. Tomorrow afternoon, though, roughly 2:30, we know where all the cards fall, what seed the Bucks will be, who they will have in the first round. And Camille and I will be back to recap it Monday on Locked On Bucks. We will talk to you then.